Ruthless Compassion is a podcast that shows you how to become fiercely kind. I'm the host, Dr. Marcia Sirota, and in each episode, I get into it with experts and regular folks about the things that get in the way of what we want. Things like addiction and mental health, isolation and loneliness, difficult family and work relationships, and the importance of self-care. I want to help you overcome the obstacles to living your best life, and I want to inspire you to become a powerful kindness warrior. Welcome, Julie Merriman, to the Ruthless Compassion podcast.
It is so good to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm very, very interested to talk to you about your new book, which is entitled, Are We Gonna Have Sex or What? The Midlife Guide to Reigniting Desire, Reclaiming Your Body, and Feeling Fully Alive. Wow, that's a mouthful, and I'm sure lots to talk about. But before we start, I always like to have my guests do a little introduction of themselves, kind of give us a little idea of who you are, what you do, and how you came to do it, which is always so interesting to me.
Oh, well, I love that. Thank you so much. Well, I am a clinician. I've been practicing in my own private practice for about 30 years. I'm also a counselor educator. So I'm a professor, actually a chair that runs a counseling department for a university where I train newbies. I love doing that into the field. I love the supervision piece and watching them grow and, just do such amazing things. My path has been windy. My daddy always said I never did anything direct. So, girl, I ended up married at 16. I'm not married to him now, and I was not pregnant. I was just in a family that put the fun into dysfunction, and I thought that was my path out. It was not. And he always told me I was too stupid. He wasn't very nice, but he always told me I was too stupid to go to college, amongst other things. But this isn't to beat up on him. I thank him for helping me redirect some things. But I ended up at college at 25 and really felt like I was behind and put myself into a pressure cooker that I now write about and talk about and have studied so much. And that as I watched my interns come in, because I've been supervising counselors for probably 30 years. I'd watch them come in, and Marcia, they'd be like, woohoo, let's do this. Yay. And 6 weeks later, they'd be dragging their leg across the floor like Igor. And I'm thinking, what is happening to these people? And that's really where I got interested in burnout and compassion fatigue. And then as I've aged, I've really realized how that nervous system messes up our desire and stuff.
Yeah, which is how you ended up getting into sexuality in mature women.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what made you decide to write a book about this topic?
Well, I've done a lot of marriage counseling in my practice. And of course, it's interesting. I'm also trained as a play therapist. So early in my practice, I was seeing young kids and families. And as I've aged, my clients have aged with me. And I noticed in so many of the marriage counseling sessions, there was unhappiness, there was resentment, there was this unspoken something in the room. And when we really got into it, I found out, of course, it's either money or sex, right? So, which really boils down to communication. But my couples didn't even have the words to talk about sex, let alone experience a really healthy, desirable sex life. So again, that got me very curious. And I realized how tied this is to the nervous system. I mean, it's the other coin for me. There's burnout on one side of the coin and lost desire on the other side of the coin.
Yeah, for sure. Because when you're burnt out, you just don't have the energy for anything, including intimacy.
Right. Yeah. It just feels like one more thing. As I'm going through this, I'm going through an accreditation process at my university right now, which is horrible. And I've realized I am in such a dysregulated state. I'd forgotten how that felt. I was that way 24/7 in my 40s and 50s. But now at least I can recognize it. And my sweet, wonderful husband that I've been married to for 35 years went to touch me and I went, ooh, I just braced up like, one more thing. No. But that's how so many of the women I work with live. And it really does impact the bedroom.
That's so interesting. Well, I was looking through your book, and the thing that kept coming out to me over and over again is about regulation,
Yeah.
which one would not expect to read about in a book about having sex, having good sex, right? So
Yeah.
I really want to talk about like the fundamentals because I think that's so important. You're talking about communication, you're talking about loss of desire, but I think emotional regulation is so key in terms of our desire, our pleasure, our capacity for intimate connection. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, absolutely. Desire, it's neurological, it's biological, as well as that contextual piece. When we have been living in this pressure cooker, and there's an allostatic load that happens too. We're looking at 20, 30 years. We haven't taken a breath. we, and it becomes our normal. We're so braced. And I mean, that braces your pelvic floor too. And your genitals are like, I just need some blood, man. You just need some blood. But when we are in that sympathetic fight or flight state, or even the dorsal vagal state where we are dissociated completely from our body, the first thing our brain is going to do, it's going to go, okay, Chicky Poo, you are in survival state. So we're taking pleasure offline. I mean, the brain is very stingy with energy, and we've taught our body this isn't a place of pleasure. So, I mean, it's a very dysregulated, I call it functional freeze. We look fine on the outside, but we are collapsed. Our nervous system is collapsed on the inside. And it's a pressure cooker. We just, expect. So to even think about desire, that just feels like one more thing on the to-do list. And we've taught our body, and our body is very wise. And we've taught our body, this is not a safe place to be, our body. And desire is not going to come online in an unsafe place. And we lose connection. We don't have time for connection. I got a to-do list. I got a boardroom to run. I got aging parents. I'm carrying the emotional labor for my family and perhaps work. I mean, it's just, we are past capacity, living in an overwhelmed state, not even realizing it. So to ask for desire to come back online takes a lot of regulation. And, I find a lot of ladies, because I'm 63 and I'm here to say my desire is very much here, but but I find a lot of ladies, we blame ourselves. What am I doing wrong? Why don't I want sex? We think that libido is gone, but it's not. It's just buried.
Yeah, that's really, really important to be aware of because I see that in men and in women.
Yeah.
I'm doing a very small psychotherapy practice now, but when I was working more full time, I would see women saying that they just lost the interest, but also women I hear from saying that their partners aren't interested,
Right.
right? So it can
Right.
be either person, but I think it's really painful when one person is saying, I want to connect with you in this physical intimacy, and the other person is going, no, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it's very hard not to feel rejected or abandoned or like what's wrong with me, like I'm defective somehow because I'm not desirable. So I think it creates such a
Yeah.
trauma in the context
Yeah.
of a relationship. And I find it strange that these relationships stay together while these people are experiencing this trauma, but I suppose that some people are willing to tolerate it. It doesn't sound like a lot of fun to me.
No, and you're so right. Both parties are very much impacted. And it doesn't sound like a fun place to be. I actually practice discernment counseling where and it's a practice where it's 5 sessions. And at the end of this 5 sessions, we're going to decide if you want to go into marriage counseling, you want a divorce, or you're just going to live in the hell that you've created. And Marcia, so many people choose to just stay without doing things. But that connection, desire is very much about connection. And here's what I found, and maybe you've seen this, and I'm talking about women, but you're absolutely right. It's just humans. But if we become these floating heads of competence, we think we can think our way out of everything. And we have completely disembodied. We don't even realize we're carrying around that our head is attached to a body. Because I also use chakra psychology because if you talk, a neuroscientist is going to talk about the vagal system through very scientific anatomy kinds of things. To me, it looks like spaghetti on an anatomy chart. And I'm trained, I'm a yoga therapist, but chakra systems we're talking about the exact same thing. We're just talking about it via energy centers. And I find from the people I work with, it's not abstract, but it gives them more of a concrete, even though it is abstract, place to go, okay, this is my heart chakra. Oh, yeah, I'm feeling that here. And have some places to go with that. All that to say, we have to work on balancing those energy centers. Because think about if we've been bracing for 20, 30 years without even realizing it, that pelvic floor is like a rock. And then we say, girl, do Kegels. I don't really need Kegels right now. Softening is very important. That softening piece is a huge piece to get desire back on. But back to the connection piece. If we're dysregulated, we don't have space or room to connect. We're not even connected to ourself, which is why I really start, whoever I work with, we start on full body scans, full of self-compassion and curiosity instead of all this judgment and hatefulness we bring to ourselves. Because the body doesn't feel like a safe place to be. So before we can connect with others, we've got to connect with ourselves.
Yeah. And if the body doesn't feel like a safe place to be, it's easier to be in the head and just be competent and intellectual and think, because that's comfortable and safe. But, dropping down into our body and actually feeling everything, feeling our desire, our pain, our aches, our, fatigue, all those things we have to come to terms with.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That interception, we have turned it off. Talking to our body, listening to our body has been turned off because we're pushing through, my God, I've got 20 syllabi to write in 1 week. I don't have time to be tired. I've got to push. Look at my calendar. I mean, we push through resentment. We swallow our truth to keep the peace. We have told our body, shut up. I don't have time for you. So it doesn't feel like a safe place to be. So it really is an excavation. And it's really an exciting time that we can come home to ourselves and have the most connected, the most intimate relationship we've ever had before. Because, I mean, my kids are in their 40s. I've been empty nesting for years, and that was so fun to get the house back. I mean, I mourned, don't get me wrong. I missed my kids, but it was fun to get the house back, and we could walk around naked, or we could do whatever we wanted, wherever we wanted, and it was fun. So, I mean, when we are so disconnected and exhausted, we don't have time for playfulness or sensuality or, getting turned on. The body's like, leave me alone.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing I was thinking about, as an older woman, if you're going to be like thinking about sex, you also have all this baggage about things that have happened with you and men. Like you were talking about a previous partner who was critical and maybe controlling. And, maybe in our lives, we've had more than one partner who was critical and or controlling. And so the body also remembers the experiences with those people who maybe weren't as gentle or attuned to our feelings and needs. And so, our sexuality also kind of carries those experiences. And how do we feel safe today in our intimacy? How do we feel safe in our body to soften, to relax, and to enjoy, right? How do we find a way to trust and open ourselves to the experience with another person if we've had unpleasant, unhappy, even upsetting experiences in the past?
Yeah, trauma is a real thing. And big T, little t, it's a real thing, and our body holds on to that. And, we encode schema around that we're carrying with us as well. It might be subconsciously, but we're carrying that. So I think it's really important. I do a lot of inner child work to go back and work through some of that wounding. And it doesn't matter if you were 5 or like 16, where some of mine might have started. It's important to hold space for that and explore that and feel what you need to feel, because we think, oh, I'll just ignore it and it'll go away. No, it's held, and we have to feel through that. I think also it's important. I put ladies, I'm talking about females here, but I know men can experience these things as well. But for us gals, so often in our sacral area, our hip area, we hold so much. Now, maybe it's ancestral trauma, but we hold so much trauma there to try and get her to stretch that, meaning let's do some butterfly poses, yoga butterfly poses, or even child's pose. Those are very soft and safe poses. Well, they can feel very vulnerable as you're going through it. And tears. I get a lot of tears as we start really moving those hips. Maybe we do some circle 8s or just simple little hip circles. And think about it. That's where our root chakra and sacral chakras live too, as we're trying to get things unfrozen and balanced. Those are really simple places to start. But I'm telling you, it can have some big, powerful impacts. Even a walking meditation where you're just feeling your whole foot can help bring that root chakra. And we're working on vagus nerve. I mean, same thing, different language. I've had ladies, as they start to defrost, as my mama used to call it, open that refrigerator and defrost, as that nervous system starts to thaw, that interoception awareness comes back. And so they're feeling some immense pain in things they have ignored for years. I have one lady right now whose feet are just burning like crazy. I always have them rule out anything with their medical doctor, but he said, I think this is nervous system stuff. And it's gotten better, but that was years of having ignored any kind of interoception. How often do we not take lunch, especially as therapists, not go to the bathroom when we need to? I mean, we've told our body to not talk to us. So as we defrost, some pain can come online, and it's okay.
Yeah, we have to go through the pain to get to the other side. We can't ignore it or sidestep it. That's what I'm always telling my patients, you have to go through it. You can't go around it or skip over it. It doesn't work.
Absolutely.
It's there.
No.
It's there.
Yeah.
It can't be denied.
And don't we want to hack it and short circuit? But the issues are in our tissues. I mean, we cannot not work in our body. We're good at thinking. I'm very somatic in my work. I'm sure you are as well. We are such good thinkers, but you got to get embodied.
Yeah. And especially if we're talking about sex, right? I mean, sex is in the body. So, I mean, we can
Right.
also have sex in the mind. But if we want to be making love with someone, we
Right.
have to be in our bodies together. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. And, that's as I'm working with couples, or maybe I just start with one of the couple to start just getting that person re-embodied and reconnected. That's a very important piece before we add that other person to the equation. But as we add that other person to the equation, intercourse is off the table for a good month or two because it's pressure. It's, oh my God, I got an orgasm. How often have we had obligatory sex or faked orgasms just to keep our partner happy when, I mean, that's a lie to our body as well. But as we try to bring everyone back online, that co-regulation is so important, where I might have them sit back to back and breathe and get that breathing co-regulated, or holding hands, just looking into each other's eyes, which it's amazing to me how uncomfortable that can make them sometimes to be silent and present with each other like that. But it's important.
I love what you said about how people can be uncomfortable about that kind of eye contact because we can have sexuality without intimacy. And
Right.
I have found that that's a very alienating experience. So, I want you to talk to me about bringing intimacy and sexuality together, what that means.
Yeah, that's you're absolutely right. There's the act of sex, and then there's intimacy. And as I'm trying to get them to that intimate place, that's why I have intercourse out of the question for a while, so they can actually start that connection, get to know each other, get to intimately hold space for each other, and be a safe person for each other. But think about it. Sex is very vulnerable. I mean, that's one of the most vulnerable, especially for a woman. That's a very vulnerable state to be in. And we have to feel safe with each other. We have to open, to soften to each other. So pleasure mapping, I think, is very important to just to start that conversation. What does this, maybe I like to send them, I know I live close to Fort Worth, Texas, and there's some great upscale sex stores there that, they're for couples and they have an actual sex therapist working there. And I like to send them there to get a new vibrator, just something fresh, not to use on genitals yet, but to use to pleasure map, to intimately talk to each other. Oh, wow, I didn't know that felt so good on my neck. Or, oh, I have a lot of sensation here on my wrist. Or we skip right to the genitals and we don't look at the rest of the body. Intimacy is a huge part of our nervous system. It's, as I said, it's neurological, it's biological. It is part of who we are as humans. And I mean, I was born in 1963. The message I got about sex was shame on you if you even talk about it, and don't you dare enjoy it. That. My grandmother,
Yikes.
preached that a whole lot. And so we also have some shame that gets in the way of I guess, again, it's old schema we're bringing forward. But we have to have really deep conversations with our partner. And I include a few scripts in the book because I found so many of my couples didn't even have the capacity for that. And I really encourage them to do this clothed and out of the bedroom so that blame and shame and those things don't get in the way, that we can have adult conversations and it be okay. Because, as you were saying, abandonment and rejection can come up if we're not careful with those conversations.
And now, let's pause for a quick word about my other podcast. Since I was a kid, I've loved watching movies. As a psychiatrist, I'm blown away by how film touches us at our core, deepens our self-knowledge, and can improve the human condition. I wanted to let listeners know that I've started a new podcast called Real Mental with Dr. Marcia Sirota. I'm going to be talking with directors, writers, actors, and critics to help people figure out their lives by getting to the truth about mental health on the big and small screen. Some recent films covered are Anora, Amelia Perez, Will and Harper, and The Last Showgirl. Please subscribe to Real Mental on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. I was thinking about how these days, especially with all the porn out there and all the consciousness of porn in our society, how sex can be performative. And then also there's this pressure to perform. It's this pressure to do things like what we see in pornography, and partners insisting or demanding that their other partner do these things because that's what they've seen in porn, but that's not something that's going to make them happy. So how do you feel like the porn industry has affected our ability to have intimate and satisfying sexual interactions these days?
That's a double-edged coin, if you will, because I talk about porn and I talk about strip clubs in my book. And there's, yes, anytime we are pressuring someone to do something they don't want to do, that's a nervous system dysregulation. You're not co-regulated, and it is not a safe place for your body, either partner. So it's very important that if you want to play with porn, or you want to play with trying out a sex club just for something novel and something different, because novelty is a very important piece of our desire and pleasure. And when it goes, I mean, that's what happens to these roommate marriages. Novelty is out the door. They don't even want to talk to each other. But if we're even thinking about the porn piece or a strip club, it has to be mutually agreed. It can't be a pressure point. It has to be safe for both people, period. Mm. And if it's not, then it needs to be absolutely off the table.
And obviously, it shouldn't be performative, right? It shouldn't be about like, I have to perform in this way and you have to perform in this way. And we're both having to like meet these kinds of expectations, these external expectations of what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, because that's BS. And that's only keeping you stuck in sympathetic or dorsal vagal state in your nervous system. It has to be something that both partners think, well, this is fun. Let's try this, with that curiosity and that novelty piece. If one person says, then that's fine. Let me respect that. Let me create this safe space for you to say no. I was working with a client the other day that she almost felt raped by her partner. um, it because she had a really hard time setting a boundary and keeping that boundary. And it kept her so dysregulated. And then, we create feelings around that. And she was really in a bad space with that. So we have to be able to set the boundaries, and our partners, he or she, needs to respect that. And then that's okay. It's okay to have boundaries. In fact,
Let's
I don't know about you, but I teach my students as a therapist. I'm a bad therapist if I let a client roll for an hour and a half. They need boundaries from me as much as I need to set my own boundaries.
Yeah. I had a joke in my group therapy. I used to say, we call this place Boundaries Are Us, like the store Toys R Us. So I
I
said,
love it.
Boundaries Are Us. That's our motto here, and
Yeah.
everyone felt incredibly safe. They always would come back to me and say, I love this group because I feel so safe, because boundaries, 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 right? So, but
Yes.
what I've seen also, and tell me if this is something you've seen, is that when we set a boundary, the partner can feel hurt, rejected, rebuffed, and they can become defensive or
Right.
angry or passive aggressive or rejecting themselves. So, how can we communicate with each other in advance that boundaries are going to be part of this, and it's not an indictment of you or a rejection of
Right.
you? It's an expression of my own needs and limits.
Right. Well, that's where that connection and intimacy is so important, so that you're having those conversations. And that's why it's important to have those conversations clothed at the park or at the kitchen table. The time to have those conversations is not when you're naked and connected, in full intercourse. That is not the time to have that, because the very thing you're talking about can happen. People get all up in up in their business, all up in their feelings about it. Intimacy and connection, that's such an important part of any relationship. Any relationship. I have a night and day relationship from the one I had at 16 to this man I've been married to for 35 years, who Texas state trooper, cattle rancher. You look, you think he's a big buff guy, and he is the most in touch with his feminine energy, the softest, most gentle lover in the world. And he is able to hear me and unconditionally hold space for me. That's what we need to be doing for our partners. And if we have some issues around that, we probably need to see our own therapist and work through that.
Yeah, because we have to be able to tolerate the other person's boundary without taking it so personally that
Right.
we decompensate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can look at kink and various things where there's, that if you do it like you're supposed to do it, I sound like Ellis the must, that you set safe words, you set boundaries. That's a very boundary practice. Or dominatrix. I cannot ever say that word like aluminum, but and that's not for everyone. But if it's something you're going to practice, it's eminently important that you have boundaries and safe words, and both parties respect that.
Just the same as when somebody has something that they want and the other person doesn't want it, the person who doesn't want it, it doesn't mean that they think their partner is bad or wrong for having those wants. It's just not something that they want. And I think
Exactly.
that's another thing that can happen in sexual relations, is that, I want to do this or have this, and the other person goes, ew, or the other person goes, no, I don't want it. But either way, we have to be able to communicate so that the person who's saying, this is not for me, doesn't shame the person, and the person who's asking for it and here's a clear boundary doesn't feel shamed.
And absolutely. And I guarantee you that kind of stuff is showing up in other areas in their relationship. It it doesn't always just show up in the bedroom. The patterns that are happening in those relationships do end up in the bedroom. And I think, just like I used to tell parents of play therapy, no one has ever suffered from going to marriage counseling, just to learn to set some really healthy boundaries and have good communication.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because, the ultimate communication is the physical communing. And yet, ironically, there's sometimes so little actual communication happening around it.
Right. Yeah. And that's the intimate part. to feel heard and seen. And we need to feel heard and seen. That really will help pleasure your body go, oh, I'm heard and seen. Oh, I can start getting back into my ventral state, my social connection state that I can be playful and I can be sensual. Heard and seen is a really powerful aphrodisiac.
Yeah. And as you were saying, it's neurological. So, especially for women, I think, if we can feel relaxed and comfortable, then our bodies get into that state of being more receptive to the pleasure stimulation.
Yeah, we soften. And spontaneous desire, even at 20, only happens for about 10 to 15% of women. The rest of the percentage, it is contextual, responsive desire. And then as we get older, it might take a little longer. And I think that's my husband and I've talked about that now that I'm 63. My orgasms are great. They're even deeper, but it takes me a little longer to get where I need to go. But that's a beautiful conversation to have, and not carry shame and grief around, oh, what's wrong with me now? Nothing. We are just having an awakening and get to come home to ourselves again.
Yeah. Speaking of getting older, there are a lot of changes that happen as women age in terms of their sexuality. There's aches and pains, as you write about in the book. There can be illnesses that we recover from.
Right.
What is your advice to women in terms of, as we change as our bodies change, as we have aches and pains, as we maybe get past a serious illness? What's your advice to women in terms of, enjoying their sexuality in the context of these kinds of things?
That's a great question. And I wrote about that specifically in the book because I just came through breast cancer and my husband has had 3 brain surgeries due to brain cancer.
Wow.
So we lived it. And then my mother lives down the road on her own ranch. So I'm taking care of her in the midst of all, and I laugh because it's better than crying. But Kelly my husband, I'm just lucky that he functions as well as he does after 3 brain surgeries and a horrible brain infection. And sex, where we'd always had a very active, spontaneous kind of sex life, it really looked different because he wasn't able to respond. He, for the first time, he would just get really upset and I had to hold space for him. Like, baby, it's okay. Let's just hold each other. Let's just talk. It's okay. Then with my breast cancer, I had a double mastectomy and a reconstruction. So my breasts felt very different. Now I was able to keep my nipples. I had a great surgeon, but my nipples do not respond like they did, even at 59. So us having to kind of relearn our bodies. And really, if you think about it, it was kind of fun. Like a teenager again. I don't know, ladies, think about it. I call it queenager sometimes when we get to our midlife and our bodies just don't feel like they used to feel. It's an opportunity to get to relearn. It's an opportunity to get to explore. So I think the mindset that we bring into it, oh my God, this is horrible, is really going to give us a different outcome than, wow, we get to explore some different things now and see what that's like. That's a really different energy. Even if we go to Mark White's narrative therapy, that narration that's running our life can be rewritten to fit better. And I think that's an important part because desire, as she's there, libido is there. We've just got to get to that ventral vagal state where we can bring everything back online. And think about it with those expectations. At 63, if I'm still expecting my body to look like it did at 20, that's a lot of dysregulation. And yeah. I'm sure you see it with folks you work with. They're embarrassed about, oh my God, my body is just doing this, that, or they have shame and irritation around their body. And that doesn't help.
Yeah. They hit menopause and they gain 10, 20 pounds and they're like in shock. And I'm thinking, no one's spared. We all end up hitting menopause if we're lucky enough, right? If we're lucky enough, we get there. So
yeah, that is so true. And my breast cancer really was eye to eye with the reaper, and I was like, oh, I got some life to live still. I'm not ready to give up. Yeah. But we can all do that in our 50s. We don't have to go invisible. We don't have to be ashamed. Yeah. And really, it's a time because estrogen, we had an estrogen-rich brain when we were younger that helped us have lots of tolerance that goes away in midlife where we're like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to look at this stuff different. How wonderful. What a gift. What a gift.
One of the best things about getting older is I just don't have the time for the nonsense. I love that. I love that part of
Yeah,
getting older. Yeah, it's like,
I right there with you. That's yeah.
I wanna kind of circle back to something you were talking about, you and your husband, and I'm sorry you guys have gone through this. It sounds like
Oh, thank
pretty
you.
hard, and it sounds like it's still kinda hard with your mom and everything. But what you said about the way you guys are dealing with each other, what I'm hearing is that there's a tremendous amount of patience and compassion that you have with each other and for each other, and that's very moving to me. That's actually almost brings tears to my eyes the way you guys are with each other, and when you say you have a great marriage, it's very clear just the way you describe how you interact, and that patience and compassion is so beautiful, and that to me is really where the intimacy lives, right?
Oh, absolutely. That makes your body feel safe. And safety brings desire and pleasure back online and playfulness. And yes, I'm very lucky. I am so in love with my husband. And I mean, he I have yoga goats and they had babies and the babies were ready to go to go to their next to the sale barn today. And he which is so sweet. He's doing that for me, but when he comes back, I guarantee you he will stop because here in Texas we have great wildflowers. I will get a bouquet of wildflowers. I mean, just little things like that, which might not seem huge, that's an aphrodisiac. He'll sext me. Sexting is a wonderful way to let it into it's foreplay, if you will, that can start in the morning. And just I'm thinking about, I hear he's thinking about me. That it just there's a sweetness to that compassion and patience. And the payoff is amazing. It's worth it. It is so worth it.
So what would you say to a woman who's maybe in her 50s and she has a partner and, they're kind of like roommates and she's saying, "It's fine. I don't need to have sex ever again. I had sex before. It wasn't the greatest, I really never enjoyed it and, guys don't know what they're doing anyway, so I'm fine to never have it again. Like I'm good." What would you say to a woman like that? Who's kind of
Yeah.
resigned, who's resigned to the thing
Yeah.
and just really doesn't see it as a great thing.
Yeah, a lot of women I work with, they start with me where they're like, "Sex, never again." Ugh. And and what happens when that nervous system starts getting regulated as she gets out of functional freeze and back into that ventral state where she's social and connected, the idea changes. Now, that takes some work. And as you well know as a therapist, it's going to get worse before it gets better because we got to work through some messy stuff. And we have a lot of opinions about messy emotions that we don't want to go to, but that's exactly where we need to go. And I've also found as we're working through all this, there's a lot of resentment towards that spouse. That truth has been swallowed. That resentment is living in that, in that heart for years. It's almost become concrete, if you will. And I think it's eminently important. And this is what I call it sacred resentment, because if we'll get in touch with it, it has a lot of wisdom to share with us about needs that have not been getting met, about boundaries that we've allowed. And I don't mean to be, I say it with love, but that lady looking at you in the mirror is responsible for setting those boundaries and getting needs met. So working through that, and there's a lot of grief to work through and forgiveness. Often we're pissed at ourselves that we have to work through. And then, yeah, that's that getting re-embodied piece. And then look at that relationship. Because sometimes there's something to be salvaged. I'd say 60 to 70% of the time, there's something to be salvaged. Now, maybe they do need a divorce, and that I'm not going to judge that. But once she or he gets embodied and really working through some of that, they're in a spot where sex looks really different. And if we're talking to him or her about what we do need, sex can feel really different than just obligatory, you know?
That's so hopeful. That's such a hopeful thought for the listener to consider today. If anyone who's listening is in that position, they can go, "You know what? Maybe it doesn't have to die this sad death." But maybe it
Right.
can be resuscitated.
Yeah. Esther Perel, who's a great sex therapist, I have my clients watch one of her videos because it really impacted me. The video is maybe there's a betrayal. She works a lot on infidelity stuff, and a lot of people can live past that and even have a better marriage. But what she said was that marriage is gone. That marriage is dead. But this is a new marriage. From here forward is a new chapter. That can be very empowering for couples to look at. Oh yeah, it's starting today forward. Okay.
That's right. And what can we create today?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I've also seen, and I'm sure you've seen this too, that people, they hit 50 and they feel old. Suddenly they're old, right? And they get
Yeah.
all these beliefs and expectations. Okay, now I'm old and therefore dot, dot, dot. And to me, the older I get, the more free I feel, the more possibility I feel, the more like energy I have. So I
Yeah.
clearly don't feel that way, but a lot of people, they're suddenly an old person, they're an old lady. And it's like,
Yeah.
and then it's like, okay, I don't have to do this anymore. Okay, maybe I don't have to do the really onerous things, but I don't have to do sex anymore, because I've hit 50, so
Yeah.
it's like, have you seen this like kind of old lady syndrome that women get into and men
Oh
get
yeah.
into, and suddenly like, okay, I'm old, therefore I'm close to death.
Yeah. Life.
Life is
Yeah.
over.
Life is
Yeah.
over. I'm going to quit living. And that's stinking thinking. That's what that is. Because
Yeah.
we are not done. The best is yet to come. I mean, at 63, I wake up. Once I get past this accreditation, I wake up and I feel like a kid in a candy store. I have so much to do, and I have so much more time usually that I own. I'm not the slave to everyone else's calendar. I own my calendar. There's lots of life left. There's lots of great sex left. If we will embrace this, I think it's the best chapter. That crone energy is an amazing energy to embrace. She's wise.
She's
She's
wise. She doesn't put
wise.
up with crap. She knows
Yeah.
herself. She's able to
Yeah.
ask for what she wants and say how she feels. And she's full of creative energy.
Absolutely. And I tell you what, we are a force to be reckoned with. I mean,
So for those people over 50 out there who are listening, you're not dead yet. Live your life, right? Live to the
yeah,
fullest. Live your life to the fullest.
absolutely. I want to go out in a body that is so worn out and lived in.
That's right. And yes, and who's enjoyed all the sex that she could, right?
That's right. That's right. Oh yeah. Oh, we're like teenagers. My
That's
goodness.
so
Yeah.
fabulous. That's so fabulous. Well, you're such an inspiration, Julie. Really, it's wonderful to talk to you. And I'm going to wrap up by asking you my last three questions, which is, where can people find you if they're looking for the book? Are we going to have sex or what? Or just to learn more about what you do?
My website is a great place to start.
All right.
Everything. I have 2 podcasts. They're linked there. My books are linked there. Yeah. Everything's there.
Phenomenal. And what are you working on these days? Anything special or new?
Yes, I've got a book I'm working on. It's more like a memoir, and I call it Lady with Her Hair on Fire, because I ran my life like my hair was on fire for a lot of years.
Fabulous. Well, just the little vignettes you shared, I'm sure your life is very, very interesting and eminently readable.
I hope so. I hope so.
And finally, my last question is, what is your call to action for the listener apropos of having a wonderful embodied sex life over 50?
It's your homecoming. It is your time to excavate who we are, because we're not the lady we were at 20, after 50. Excavate her, have a homecoming, and live your best life.
That's fabulous. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Julie Merriman, for coming on the Ruthless Compassion podcast today. It's really been a delight talking with you.
Oh, Marcia, it's been lovely. Thank you for having me.
This is Dr. Marcia Sirota. Thank you for listening. Please leave a review and your comments wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to sign up for my free newsletter at marciasirotamd.com, where you'll learn about upcoming online events as well. Also, we love getting referrals from our listeners about future podcast guests, so please email us at info@marciasirotamd.com.